Radio, we're going to take a look at the Leatherman Charge and the Swisstool Spirit X. Two two titans, two contenders for the middleweight crown of multi tools. There's quite a lot written comparing these two tools. Most of it a fairly shrill pitch, it has to be said. They certainly both have their followers and their fans. Personally, you can take these things too seriously, um, but and people do. But nevertheless, let's get into it. And what I'm going to do is really just compare and contrast them on different levels. Just give you my view. I do favour one over the other, and it'll become obvious probably pretty quickly. But I also want to preface all this by saying that really, all said and done, after all the bluster's over, I don't really think there's very much that one of them could do that the other one can't. Yeah, they've both got tools that the other one doesn't have, and you have to take that into consideration. Materials wise, obviously the Charge has got titanium scales. It's got an S30V blade. It would probably be fairer to compare it to a Wave, really, but I haven't got a Wave, so a Charge it is. So we'll ignore the material side of it because the Charge is also 50 quid more expensive or whatever because of it, and you'll have to make up your mind whether it's worth it or you think a Wave or this or whatever. Okay, well, look, let's talk about the Charge first of all. Then, for anyone, there may be two or three of you out there who saw my one of my other videos in which the Charge kind of featured in that. Well, my opinion of it hasn't changed at all. Really, I'm not a fan of it. I've got to be honest. Okay, look, I mean, these outside tools, especially this blade, are excellent. I mean, that's got to be the best blade on a multi-tool, I'd say, just for ease of deployment, steel, the looks of it, everything about it. It's a great blade. And all these outside tools are fantastic and they're very easily accessible. The serrated blade, and obviously you've got the file, diamond coated, and the saw on the other side. And I think on that level, the Charge is excellent. It's an excellent penknife, basically. As soon as you open it up, I think it all starts to go a bit downhill for it, unfortunately. It's quite big. It's quite bulky. The handles are quite big and thick, because they have to accommodate tools on the outside and the inside. My biggest gripe about it is that the tools, because they all meet here, it's very easy to get your hand pinched in there. Yeah, I mean, it's very capable, but it's got one or two drawbacks. I think it's rather bulky, rather crude looking, frankly. Too heavy for my liking. And the inside tools, I mean, it's not really a tool review as such because I'm not going to go through all these things in any detail because I'm going to take a punt, and I reckon that most of you probably know these tools back to front. But the bit driver, the can opener. I actually am a fan of these can openers. They get a bit of a hard time off some people, but I prefer them because basically you can use them as other things. You can use them as a bit of a package opener, a bit of a sort of bit of a gouge or whatever. Because really, I'm not going to open a can or a bottle with it, to be honest. But yeah, you can use it for other things. The bit driver. This doesn't have a bit driver, just as dedicated screwdrivers. Will come onto that. So, if you think it's important to have lots of different bits, then you may preference the Charge. But bear in mind, they're also a bit short and stubby, this driver. And on the other side, you've just got you have got a flat blade or sort of pry thing. You've got another tiny screwdriver you can flip over. It's a Phillips on the other side, and you've got standard pair of scissors that you get in the Fuse and things like that. Nothing wrong per se with anything on it, but the package, like I say, yeah, I'm not a massive fan of it. Not a massive fan of it. This, on the other hand, I am, to be honest. I love it. I think it's just an elegant, well designed, beautifully made, very high quality in craftsmanship. It's a lovely thing. I just think it looks great. The ergonomics of the handle when it's open, it's got a great shape. Looks like a kind of old-fashioned rocket. All the tools are on the outside, but they're not one-handed opening. They're not as quickly deployable as these. So yeah, it's an advantage having them on the outside. But given that they're not all that quick to deploy, kind of trade-off there, or whatever you want. In fact, unless you're well acquainted with it, you do have to go fishing around. But this is the version of the Swisstool Spirit. I think it's a Swisstool Spirit X that has the normal Swiss Army knife kind of blade. Yeah, look, I mean, that's a nicer blade on the Charge. No one's going to say it isn't. But I think for all practical purposes, they could probably achieve much of the same things. Bearing in mind this is made of a better steel. But aside from that, I mean, these Swiss Army knives have been getting people out of scrapes for 100 years or something more. So it's a fine blade. But that's an exceptional blade, I'd say. So credit where credit's due. On the saw front, my feeling is that the saws are very, very similar. I know there's sort of militants out there who favour one over the other, but in the real world, they're both going to do the same thing. So I'm not going to get into a fight over the saw. All the tools on both these tools, all this stuff. The scissors, they're not your standard Victorinox scissors. They got this sort of retention bar here, and they're nice. They've got a nice action to them, but they don't open all that wide. That is actually as wide as you can get them open, and that might be a problem for some people. It's not a big problem for me. I mean, I don't use the scissors all that much, but it's a quibble. If you want to make one, the file, it's good. It's not as good as the file on this. I think we've got to be honest and give the file to this as well, because for a start, you've got that diamond coated side, which is really useful for sharpening tools and stuff like that, and your normal sort of crisscross side. This similar, you got sort of, it's actually much coarser crisscross side, and a sort of smoother side. But yeah, on balance, I'd give it to the Charge, but again, there's not a million things you could do with one that you couldn't do with the other. So I don't think there's anything to get carried away about there. And then, the other tools on here are your sort of standard fare, really. What's nice about them is that the tools, the whole thing is just a lot better made and a lot more precisely made than the Charge, even though it's much cheaper. Not a fair bit cheaper. I mean, they're both pretty pricey, let's face it. But the tools come out, they all, similar to a Swiss Army knife, they sort of all rest in that position, and then you click them into place. They each have their, I don't know how well that will come out there. If you can see the lines there, each tool has its own little spring on there, which makes a very secure lockup. And the screwdrivers have all got a nice long shank, What else we got? I mean, you got your bits, a little flathead there. Yeah, I mean, one thing, the can opener, you got your classic Victorinox can opener here, which a lot of people like. I'm not such a fan, with the little screwdriver on the end. And then you've got a cap lifter, which is also the main, flathead driver and sort of crate opener, I think it's called, but basically a pry. It's very thick. I don't know if you can see that. It's the thickest tool, thickest yeah, tool on the tool, whatever you want to say. But like I say, I don't really need that. But anyway, I suppose it takes away from it too much. So there you go. You also get an awl on this, which you don't have on the Charge, which I know a lot of people would like to see. All seem quite popular. I never have all that much use for one, but yeah, it's got one. There you go. And the other thing of interest that this has is this, which is a chisel scraper type tool, which is actually pretty handy, very sharp. It's also got these notches, grooves, whatever, for stripping wire. Yeah, handy. And like I say, I think when you open it up, you know, it wins hands down over this. Feels it's lighter. I don't. To be fair, I don't know what the actual weights are, but it feels lighter. It is a bit lighter. It's got a much nicer feel in your hand. I mean, you only need to look at it to see that it's going to be comfy. It's all nice and smooth and beautifully shaped. The plier head, yeah, some people, you know, it's a big deal having these fine sort of needle nose points to it. It's not quite so small a point on these. Sorry if I wander out of view. I'm just doing this through a phone, so it's a little bit. But again, you know, I wouldn't go mad. I think they could both do the same things. I don't like this cap crimper hole here. I mean, it's just. Whoops, we almost lost the whole shebang. Yeah, it's. I don't. I mean, I would have thought one person in 1,000 needs that. I'm gonna stick it on every one of these. Anyway, there you go. So, yeah, I mean, in short, I much prefer the Swisstool Spirit X. I think it's better made. It's a nicer looking tool. I think it's better designed. Yes, this has some advantages, and I've spelled them out. There's no doubt about it. Particularly when it's closed, the outside tools are good. Not gonna lie, but overall, as a multi-tool, I think you've got to say that this is the winner. And to be fair, if you've never actually seen one of these in the flesh, so to speak, if you've never actually held one, I never had until I bought one. And it's just the minute you hold it, the minute you see it in reality, and you can feel the quality, and you can just, you know, get a feel for the tool and the way the thing opens and all the rest of it. You'll realise that it's, you know, it's in a different league to this, I think, quality-wise. Now, I know many will disagree passionately, and that is cool because I like that, because it's good to see people into things. You know, and at the end of the day, the best tool for you is the best tool for you. You know, that's the best tool. It doesn't matter. There isn't much objectivity to it. It's going to be the one that you feel does the job for you. Just a little word while we're here about the carry cases. I think, funnily enough, I think they very much mirror the tools. You get this huge, crude, thick piece of probably indestructible, but nevertheless pretty ugly and heavy leather thing for the Charge. It does have a little pocket here to fit the bit drivers for the bits for the driver. Not a fan. I mean, when you pack it all away, I mean, you see how big and bulky this thing really is. I mean, it's a wedge and it's heavy. You know, this on the other hand, nicer. The only fault is this Velcro. It's a shame. I would have preferred a stud, personally. Yeah, I would have preferred a stud, but it's a nice, neat leather case. Kind of similar to the old Leatherman ones, if you know what I mean. You know, neater, lighter. You know, better's a bit of a value judgment, but you know, whatever. And there you go. So, yeah, we had to have a winner by the end of the night, and I would say maybe not a knockout, but on points. I give it to this guy. I give it to the Spirit, and yeah. Perhaps controversial, but then these things often are. So anyway, I hope that was helpful. If you're kind of looking at the two of them and thinking you might buy one, or you've got one and you're considering the other. Um, like I said right at the beginning, both good tools at the end of the day. They'll both do more or less the same things. Um, Everyone's got their preferences aesthetically and in other ways, but for what it's worth, that is my two penneth worth, and I hope you I hope you made it to the end. All right, cheers.